Okay, I'm the farmer in the house, not the doctor and the entomologist. I've had to get my hands dirty to understand what I'm doing. I've had to self-educate myself. So it's been a really great journey, I must say. So some days I feel like that. I think Lance was like that a few years ago. So basically, what I want to chat about, and we'll go a bit further into carbon and microbes. Let's stop and let's think about what we're doing. And a lot of guys have already started doing that, which is really exciting. Down the south coast, we're seeing quite a lot of change, and really exciting to see the change that's happening. And actually, open-mindedness, guys, farmers opening up their minds to that was weird 10 years ago, now it's sort of accepted. So yeah, let's go back. We've caused enough damage. Maybe we should be going back and just think about what we're doing, and let's start again, if possible. Nature can correct itself quite quickly, by the way. So don't think that it's going to take 20 years, because it doesn't actually take 20 years. So nature gives, I'm just going to sort of pie in the sky sort of stuff for now. Nature gives us a whole lot of tools or gifts that actually come to us for free. Do any of you guys want to give me one or two that you think you've been given for free that you maybe not utilizing properly? Water, yes. Yes, carry on. No, less sunshine. Yeah, more is more. Oxygen, insects, and so we carry on. So I've just got a few others that I'm going to, and they're similar to what you've got, but they're all correct. So how do we maximize the use of these gifts that we've been given that we're actually ignoring? And really it's for free. We need to take advantage of it. Sunlight. If we have a really healthy plant with many more leaves on it, we're going to take advantage of the sunlight and the photosynthesis. So it's actually imperative that we have healthy trees to take advantage of this free product that we've been given. Rainfall. How are we storing rainfall? I mean, we had quite heavy rainfalls this year. How much of the water is actually going off our farms? So without soil structure, without carbon, we're not going to be able to take advantage of actually holding that in our soils. So this is all part of an IPM program. If we're not holding water, we're actually going to land up by having to irrigation is costly. It's going to cost us a lot of money in production. Parent material, so yes, we paid for it when we bought the farm, but there's nutrition in that soil. There's nutrition in rocks, and microbes actually help you break that down. And they make that nutrition available to your plant. But we're actually not even considering that. Most of us aren't. We're applying fertilizer to replace the parent material. And that's because we don't have the microbes in the soil. Organic matter. So whose organic matter is above 5 here? One gentleman. Well, I think that's absolutely amazing that it is. So you may have a prize for that. And by the way, when we finish, I just want to see your soil samples to check on it, if you don't mind. If you've lied, I'll tell everybody that you lied. So interesting thing is, 1% increase in organic matter, and you can fiddle these figures. I've heard between 60,000 and 100,000 litres of water is held in that 1% organic matter. So how much money have you just spent on irrigation? Why don't you spend a little bit of money on organic matter?
Sorry, Mark. The other way to look at it is a soil that's high in organic matter will hold 80% more water than a soil that's not.
There we go. He's got 5% organic matter, no doubt. So, I mean, they're sitting in front of you, and we're actually not utilizing it. We're spending a lot of money in irrigation, a lot. And remember too, if I got a healthy soil, my roots are going to go much deeper. They're going to fetch water that I've stored. Organisms, microbes, they build resilience, they feed your plant, they form soil structure, they aerate the soil, they increase your water holding capacity. There's a whole list of stuff there. Why wouldn't you want these guys on your farm? Who here thinks that you actually don't need these guys? You can be honest if you want to. Yeah, we need these guys. So the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. So you'd like to say something?
I said it sounds vaguely familiar.
So what have you done recently that points in that direction?
No, that's exactly what you're saying on the cyclic, where people, because your dad did it like that, and the manager before you did it like that, so you just carry on doing it, but not without really thinking about why you do it.
Yeah, you're not questioning it.
No.
Or you do, but you're not really doing much about it.
Yeah.
So I think you need to make sure that you stay out of the sun with the Amadimpi hat.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, so, I mean, if you want to start, so if you look at, are you preventative or curative? Think about Phytophthora. What have you done about Phytophthora for the last 10 years?
React.
For 10, what was it, 20 years? 50 years? I mean, that's insanity. Sorry, I don't mean to say you're insane. But you actually are. No. You're insane, fellow, no. No, so seriously, I mean, oops, I'm spoiling the picture here. So that's just a simple example of something we've done over and over and again, and we haven't stopped to think about it. So we've been told, yeah, this is what you need to do, and nobody questions it. So here's an example of trying to shift the mindset. Okay, it's in Evos. So when I got to this farm in the sort of Wartburg area, this tree was pretty much on its way out. So all we did is let's unite with some chemistry. So we added some Everguard. We added some our soil health program. We put a fungi and a bacteria in place. And literally that took 2 months. And I promise you it's the same tree. But I'm not saying this is going to happen every day. This is, it was incredible. That's all I can say. I agree with you. Absolutely amazing how quickly it responded. But there again, so we think out the box. We need the chemistry because the Phytophthora has already got into the tree. So we need something to get into the tree to sort out the Phytophthora. Then we look after the soils. It actually wasn't that difficult. Yet we got a really good result. And here are other results as well on farms down the south coast. This tree should look like that. So when we got there, it was actually in very, very poor shape. But you can see the leaf flush that we've now created by putting some fungi and bacteria in. Also note, there's no compost here. So there are other ways to go about doing something. Here as well, up the north coast, the tree was really battling. If you look at the background, that's how tall the tree should be. It was really battling, but look at this lack of leaf flush that we've now created. So it's just changing the way we approach something. Those trees would have died if the farmer had continued doing what he's doing. They wouldn't have survived. So, should we farm the crop or farm soil? So who wants to farm the crop? Yes, no, yaks are boring. You're not challenging me. So where I'm at the moment, for me, farm the soil. The crop will happen. I know it sounds a little bit simple, but really at the end of the day, we need to be concentrating on what's going under the ground. Who agrees with that? We'll have to get some prizes out. Nonsense, you've done so well. Have you? Then you don't get the prize. Then you don't get the prize. No, you get nothing. There are more questions. All right, you have an opportunity. Okay, are we able to reduce reliance on fertilizer and chemistry? Anybody disagree with that? No. We're not able to, or we are able to. Yeah. So there's a shift. If I'd asked that question 10 years ago, what would you have said to me? There's the door, get out. You're crazy. So the shift's already happening. We're on the way. Great news. So let's look at what is dirt and what is soil. So I have been on Elaine Ingham's course, so some of the stuff comes from her. So your average dirt, sand, silt, clay, that's what we used to have in a lot of farms. I'm sure a lot of guys will recognize that. What we had in that scenario is anaerobic microbes. So when you've got anaerobic microbes, you have Phytophthora. Take the air out the system, you get Phytophthora. So what do we need to do, and also no carbon? So those ingredients are missing in soil. So what do we need to do? We need to shift sand, silt and clay, add aerobic microbes. It's critical. You must be adding aerobic, not anaerobic microbes. And then we need to be putting carbon into the soil. I've seen a lot of compost in various farms. It's anaerobic compost going onto their trees. So that seems a bit pointless. You're doing a great job, but you're actually failing at the end. So really need to know, if you're going to make compost, please make sure you know what you're doing. You need a microscope. You need to be checking to see what you've got in your compost. And it's not impossible to do. You can do it on farm. So yeah, those are the key ingredients to move dirt from dirt to soil. So if we look at the results of dirt, so if you've got dirt in your farm, what problems are you picking up? So I've got anaerobic environment, I've got no organic matter. What problems will I pick up? Yeah, pests and diseases.
Weeds.
Weeds is another one. Weird thing, fungi can control weeds. That's like weird. Forget I told you that. Anything else? There's a whole horde of them. So dirt, poor, no soil structure, water retention, polluted water, soil erosion, no beneficial biomass, limited root development, poor carbon, nutrient recycling, poor nutrient availability, pests and diseases, high soil temperatures, compaction, anaerobic conditions. Do I need to carry on? Another one for me? Nitrogen. I mean, I've been told 70% of our nitrogen has been leached out of the soils. Do you think it's possible? That's a lot of nitrogen. That's a lot of bucks. Yeah. So why are we spending all this money on nitrogen, for example, when it's actually going into our rivers? Why are we doing that? I'm not saying don't do it. But to ask the question about how much you're putting down. How frequently you're putting it down. What have you got in the soil to actually hold the nitrogen in your soil? Reliance on fertilizer and chemistry, are we there? Are we reliant on it? I think if you have got dirt, you're pretty much reliant on it. You have to. You've got pest and disease problems. You've got leaching problems. Plants are not resilient and stressed plants. So we all know a stressed plant basically is not going to do very well for you. Okay, so that's a hell of a list of issues that are potentially on your farm, but if you've solved and you've got 5% organic matter, these things go away. So let's look at result of soil. Okay, so this is Justin Watson. He's in Albert Falls Dam. He started using our root health program, which included a fungi, a bacteria, and silica. He went through last winter with all those frosts and he didn't lose one tree. Not one. But he focused on the soil. He's put compost and he's focused on ensuring his soils are working for him. The last time he put fertilizer down was at 6 months of age, 20 grams. That's the last time he put fertilizer down. They're now 18 months old. So yeah, we can reduce reliance on fertilizer. We can do it if we just change the way we're operating. So don't rush out there and stop fertilizing, please, because that wouldn't be a good idea. So if you've got the results of soil, you're an aerobic soil. You've got no compaction. That's pretty much impossible to get entirely, but we're heading towards that environment. We've got aerobic beneficial microbes. So there's the key again. It's aerobic. We've got water retention, nutrient recycling. We've increased our organic matter. We've got lower leaching of nutrients, diversity, plant resilience, reducing reliance on chemistry. We've got soil structure. When you've got microbes, you start creating soil structure. There's a whole lot of other stuff, but I'm not going to go make that list endless. Okay, so this is a farm down the south coast. It's John Evans, for those of you who know him. He did a trial for us, well, for himself actually. So he wanted to prove to himself that all the stuff we've been telling him actually works. So on the right-hand side, is where he applied product, and on the left-hand side, he just continued as normal. He applied fungi, bacteria, some silica, and you can see the condition of these trees, young trees, is way better than the condition of these young trees. It's a huge difference in growth. There's more leaves, they're wider leaves. Leaf surface area is way better. The color is better. The leaf sampling is showing that these are in really good nick, where here he's still got to add a bit of fert. On the right-hand side, he's already for 3 months now reduced his fertilizer input by 30%. This is a farm-driven trial, and he's proved to himself that by going the soil health type route is way better than what he's been doing. Look at the color of these leaves here. They're yellow compared to where he's applied. There's a massive difference. And then we noticed too, well, he noticed, so I'm telling you what he's told me. Leaf length, width, and even the maturity. You can see this leaf is actually maturing ahead of this leaf. So this leaf is from here, that's from there. You can see it's maturing a bit earlier. So even if you think of thrips, for example, if I can get this leaf to mature quicker, surely thrips is going to be less effective. It's a long shot, but if I can increase it by 5% or 10% and mature it earlier, I'm going to have less impact from thrips. Because thrips it only likes soft leaf material. So just another way to see thrip control. And you're getting thrip control, well, not control, but you're improving your leaf surface area. You're going to lose less leaves just by farming better, taking a different approach. Just another example. So we've applied fungi and bacteria in this nursery of Max. Here we hadn't applied. Look at that root system. And if you look carefully, look at the number of leaves up here versus here. Big difference in the number of leaves, which means there's a big difference in photosynthesis. The rate of photosynthesis is going to be higher.
Thickness of the stem as well.
And the thickness of the stem as well was critical, and that's something I forgot to mention. Even here, we noticed the thickness of stem here too was way better than on this side. It stands out, it's pretty obvious. And in young trees, you definitely want to be creating a nice thick stem with a nice big, strong, solid root system. There are also proteroid roots developing and where we've put fungi and bacteria. Now imagine that root surface area, how that's tenfold compared to what you had before. So nutrient uptake is tenfold. So if we look at the soil food web, and I think it's quite critical to actually understand it. So what we normally got, you've got your plants, you've got photosynthesis taking place, you've got roots dying off, you've got organic matter that's also in the soil from your leaves dropping and dying off. And these fungi and bacteria are obviously your foundation in your soil food web. They will consume this organic matter that's delivered into the soil. From there, if you look at your bacteria are consumed by protozoa, nematodes, and arthropods. So you see this, it's quite a lot of different, the level that it's actually supporting is actually very interesting. Protozoas as well, if you see a lot of protozoa in your soil, that's an indication that you're going anaerobic. So there are indicators in the soil when things are going wrong. And so protozoa too, you'll find in your compost. So if you see protozoa in your compost, you know you've actually gone the wrong direction. So what these guys do, they consume your organic matter. They then produce like a glue that they start bringing your soil, your fine silt particles towards themselves, and they start forming soil structure. So these guys are critical for soil structure. Then your arthropods will consume the fungi, and they then release nutrients back to the plant. So they are the most effective nutrient recyclers we've got in the whole system. So the plant feeds the fungi and bacteria. The arthropods eat the fungi and the bacteria, and they return nutrients back to the plant. Because the way they feed it, your fungi and bacteria has got a very, very high nutrient, they're very high in nutrients compared to what the arthropod needs. So immediately they've got the availability of nutrients is too high, and they just pass it onto the plant. Okay, your nematodes as well. These root-feeding nematodes are consumed by your arthropods. So it's like putting cattle into a camp without grass. If we take these guys out, you can't put cattle into that camp. If you put those oaks back in again, you're feeding the cattle that will then feed on the root-feeding nematodes. Now remember, we don't want root-feeding nematodes in the system. So we're just using the soil food web to control nematodes, the root-feeding nematodes. But also remember, there's some nematodes, they call them switches. I might need some help. That if the fungi aren't there, they'll actually become root feeders. So if you think you've got a great orchard, but you're lacking fungi, you could be creating a problem here, just because you don't have fungi in the system. So here integrated this whole soil food web is.
Where does Phytophthora fit in?
That's here. So if I got an anaerobic environment, that's where these guys are.
So can I just add this? So with nematodes and with general pathogens or bacteria and fungi, you don't really want to get rid of them completely. You want the system, the underground system, to be healthy enough that even if they're there, your plant isn't feeding its effects. So with nematodes, you can have numbers of root-feeding nematodes that will feed on your roots, but it won't actually affect your plant because your soil is healthy, so the numbers are kept in check, and then your plant is healthy, so even if it is feeding, it can withstand damage. It's the same thing with if you've got good fungi and good bacteria, it will displace the pathogens. So Phytophthora is a fungus, but if you've got more good fungi, it will displace the Phytophthora.
So short and sweet on that, nature always goes back to balance. You can't get rid of every green mamba in the country. There will always be, so that's exactly what's happening. So it's a numbers game. If I've got a very high nematode feeding count, I've got problems. So it's just a numbers game that you're fiddling with. But you can fiddle with it if you know what's going on and if you understand the soil food web. So to start off with, I don't want an anaerobic environment, because in an anaerobic environment, the numbers are higher. There's more Phytophthora and less trichoderma, for example. So it's on a seesaw. Too much Phytophthora, too little trichoderma. The moment I start going to an aerobic environment, I start to swing it. And that's what we're trying to do. But we need an aerobic environment to be able to swing it. And we need microbes back in the soil to be able to swing it.
Can I ask a question? The protozoa, what would make compost high in protozoa? And you say that that's something that shouldn't be there. It shows the compost isn't.
So that's, yeah, the moment you start going in, so if when you're producing compost, it's actually the rate that like bacteria expands at. So every 20 minutes, one bacteria becomes 2, becomes 4, becomes 8. And that heat is created from that massive growth rate of bacteria.
Okay.
And they're also consuming all the food. And in that process, you start running out of oxygen. So and then you start going anaerobic. And that's why you've got to turn it at a certain temperature. Even if you go to your compost and you dig, say, that deep and you see like white specks in it, that's actinobacteria. That's another indicator that you're going anaerobic.
It's still breaking down.
Yeah, it is still breaking down, but you're going anaerobic. When you go anaerobic, you're getting non-beneficial bacteria or fungi in your compost.
Okay, all right. Now, I'm going to ask you now for all these husks. Now, I mean, you could boil water. I mean, when that starts breaking down, it's pointless putting it on until it's broken down completely, so that that process has done its thing, and everything's now back to normal. Is that correct?
So your husks are normally quite, they're jagged in all sorts of shapes, and there's quite aerate.
I'm talking about a pile, and you can see the steam coming out.
No, then you go. I mean, if you don't turn that pile, you're going to go anaerobic.
No, but you wait. If you wait for it to eventually, after 2 or 3 weeks, it breaks down completely, and there's no heat. You can put your hand in, there's no heat.
Okay.
I mean, would you say that's anaerobic?
So you can. I can't answer the question unless we test it.
Yeah. Okay.
But you can do stagnant compost piles. But you don't literally just leave it there. There are different ways to do composting like that. Yeah.
Sorry, a really basic question. Anaerobic is a lack of air.
Yes. Yeah. So if you're swimming for too long, your fingers go crinkly, basically. Yeah.
So if you put anaerobic compost down, what are the negatives of that? So
Well, you land by putting your non-beneficial microbes onto your tree.
but the
that's what
organic matter is still there, which
Yeah, so that is there, but normally too in an organic aerobic environment, you've actually burnt your compost. It goes black. So you've actually burnt it. You haven't produced good quality compost.
so you shouldn't put that down.
And it also normally doesn't smell. Sorry, other way around. It normally smells as well. So if you go into those compost piles, you can dig it up and smell, and you'll even pick up insects inside there as well.
So apart from the organic matter, it's worth nothing.
Pretty much so.
Yeah.
What do you do to
So-
break that, Mark? How do you make compost? Do you use a formula on there to do that?
Composting, and I don't know enough about it, but composting is aeration, temperature, and water. If you get those three right, then you'll make good compost. But you've got to be constantly watching the temperature and making sure the water's there. Also, the food availability for what you're trying to produce is another factor.
Can I tell you a little story? Not far from here, up the hill here, was a guy maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and he was making compost here. And he turned it with a machine, but he also sprayed the central air onto there. And he went as far as to say that if you had a crop of tomatoes and they were all curling up, you just spray that on. And you would leave them there. People would take them out and go and burn them because it would leave the pathogen there.
Yeah.
Just leave them there. So it just didn't matter at all. This thing would completely turn the whole thing around. It was a Japanese product, and you mix it with molasses and sprayed it on. But then he died, and I've lost contact with him. So I don't know. That's why I'm asking the question, because it was very beneficial. He even gave it to his labourers when they had a runny tummy as well. And sold it out. But it's something that really interested me.
Now, you have got products that you can spray on that speed up the composting processes. They are there. Molasses is also made. It's a very simple sugar, so it's really bacterial food. So if you're trying to produce fungi, then that's not quite the right product to be using. But
he was actually mixing it with a weak solution molasses
Yeah.
to grow the stuff first, then put it onto the field.
yeah, okay, right.
So all that white stuff, when you dig down in the soil and you see that white stuff, is it always a bad sign?
Now it depends on what. I mean, you can get, if you got like strands, that's obviously fungi. But if you get, it's like white dots in your compost. That's generally an actinobacteria, or that's indicating anaerobic environments. Or you're heading that way. You're not there yet, but you're heading that way. So it's an indicator. Like protozoa is an indicator in the soil that you're also going anaerobic. So there are indicators out there to help you assess what's going on.
Mark, if your compost, if you leave it for, say, instead of using it in 3 weeks or whatever, you leave it for 2 years or something like that, does that become good?
Yeah, once it's cold, it's finished composting. While it's still hot, then you need to pay attention. But once it's cooled off, good compost should not smell. Should be like a 70% cocoa, the chocolate. What's that stuff called? That sort of color. Yeah. And it should be cold. Shouldn't be hot.
If I can interject, Mark, I think there's concern around the room because what we rely on heavily in the industry is the value in our husks. And what Dad was trying to say earlier was also one of the things that we found is if we get those husks back into the field at too early a stage, you have had any susceptibility to husk rot. It can spread and unfortunately reinfect that orchard quite quickly.
Yeah.
However, should you allow for it to break down, it goes through those great heats, it breaks down very quickly. But what you were alluding to, I agree with, because of the irregular shape of it as well. It is actually kind of aerated anyway.
Yeah.
So I mean, I wouldn't for a second, and I don't have the figures. You're very right. You should actually test it to see exactly what beneficials are in it. But and Len was asking a question as well. The organic component of it, putting those husks back into our orchard, has been massively beneficial. And then obviously boosting it with your product, which I've been doing. It's very valued. Those husks are like gold. Treat them like gold.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you might fight with me later when I go further, but we'll wait for that to happen. Okay, so I think we've basically covered enough on the soil food web. So imagine I took out the bacteria and I took out the fungi, the whole system just collapses. And then you'll be back to sand, silt and clay again. So just be aware of what you're doing. Every time you rip and disc a land, you're killing your fungi. Your bacteria will survive. In fact, the bacteria count will climb the moment you aerate your soil like that. So just be aware of what you're doing. So what does a living soil provide us? Healthy, resilient, resistant plants. I've seen that actually in all sorts of places now. Great tasting nuts, nutritionally balanced food, and satisfying hunger. So even if you look at the picture I showed you of those trees with John, they're nice and green. So for me, that's indicating that they're nutritionally balanced. When they're yellow, they're not nutritionally balanced. And it's a very simplistic way to look at it, but that's the way it is. So I did some work on avos some time ago, and I'm just pointing this out because I want to show you something with the husks as well on your nuts. So I weighed the entire avo. I then weighed the pip, the flesh, the skin, and actually interesting things came out of it. So here we had applied root health. So this tree theoretically was, let's go extreme, it was not stressed at all. And this tree had no assistance, so it was stressed. Look what happened to the percentage of skin here versus where we treated. So what is the plant busy doing there? Wear this hat with pride.
So they don't have the answer, Mark.
You'd like to say a bit louder.
Like it's building a thick skin to protect itself.
Exactly. Yeah. So if I'm stressed, I'm going to build a thicker skin to protect the seed. So if you look at a tree, the reason for production is to ensure the next generation. It's not to feed me, but we're trying to shift it to feed us. So the moment I'm stressed, I'm going to look after that pip straight away. And the same will go in with your max as well. If the tree is stressed, so Gary, in your high altitude, you probably get a much thicker husk. Thicker shell, yeah. And husk too, I've seen, even down here I've seen it. So you get a thicker husk, you get a thicker shell, which ultimately lands up with a smaller nut. Yeah. So the mac's doing exactly the same thing. So why don't we just try and remove some of the stress, so that we're not losing, because your nut is where the bucks is. That's where your money is. So on that same farm where we looked at with old John's place, we just picked up some nuts and we broken open the husk. And look at the difference here. And they weren't all like that. So not every single one's like that, I'll be honest. But look, that's much thinner, much thicker. So the principle is the same as what I've worked out with the avos. So all we need to do, sounds very simple, let's remove the stress as best we can. So if you've got a healthy soil, so we're talking soil and not dirt, we've got natural control processes or fungi and bacteria in the soil that can actually help us with our pest and disease control. Here's fungi, it's the Bavaria bassiana, it's actually found in the soil. It's controlling, that's a stink bug. This one I haven't managed to identify yet. It was found on a cannabis plant, so he's no longer a happy fellow. But yeah, you can use the soil to control some of your pest and disease issues. You've got arthropods, spiders in your soil that will that will move around in the soil. They'll pick up viruses or a fungi or a bacteria. They'll climb up your tree and they're delivering it into your tree. And it's happening. If they're there, it does happen. And we're actually not getting that working for us anymore because our soils are anaerobic. Living soil, living environment. So if we're protecting our soils, we'll get a better above ground environment. So this is a samurai wasp that I found on a farm not far from here. So these stink bug eggs that aren't infected, you can see here these are infected and these little guys are hatching out of here. Now normally we're not paying attention to those guys. Sometimes we're just spraying and getting rid of these guys and they're there. We just need to look after them. Soil and insects. So insects are critical to soil health. They interact with all the biological communities. So some guys are eating some fungi, some guys are eating each other. You've got all this interaction going on. You've got them walking through your soils, not walking, crawling through the soil, and they're aerating it. They're moving particles. And on top of it as well, they're acting as a taxi service. They're picking up these fungi and bacteria, and they'll move it to another position in the soil and dump it there. So you're getting movement all the time going on. But if your soil isn't alive, that ain't going to happen. So here, vertebrates, arthropods, nematodes, they're all playing a role in pest control. The other thing as well that we need to pay attention to, your leaf surface area. If you've got roughly 70% of beneficial fungi and bacteria and viruses on your leaf surface area, the chances of getting a pest and disease on there is far, far less. And it's basically competition for space on the leaf surface area. You're not allowing, you look at me strangely, there's not enough surface area for these things to get onto and attach themselves to it. So I got a guy that applied double nickel, so it's a Amelia leucophaceate, on a crop from the time he planted the cutting. He never got powdery mildew. He's just filled the leaf surface area with the good guys. That's all he's done. And the plant has built some sort of resilience or resistance out of it. Insects add carbon into the soil. And that's actually where I was really trying to get to. The more insects, the more carbon. The more fungi, the more carbon. So we see soils are critical. So how are we going to improve our soils, increase carbon microbes? How are we going to do that? Anybody?
Well, you've got to set the platform. You got to put everything back in.
What's the platform?
Organic matter.
Yeah, and?
Microbes.
Yeah.
Things that create carbon in the soil.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't have enough hats. Yeah, so there, you guys are already, I mean, you know the answers. It's not like new. So where's the carbon? Soil contains about 3 times more carbon than vegetation. So what should you concentrate on? There's twice as much carbon in the soil as it is in the atmosphere, presently. And that's also moving. We all know, I think it was, I don't remember the counts, but we're steadily moving in the wrong direction. But the soil is it's a natural carbon sink. So how are we going to get carbon back into the soil?
Stop ploughing.
And if you can't, if you've got to plough?
No such thing as can't.
I like that attitude. So where do plants get nutrients from? I should be going, okay, you got the first answer. There are 2. Where do plants get nutrients from? And? I don't know who gave the right answer, but whoever did, there's some suntan cream for you. Who doesn't have any suntan cream in their bucky? One more. Come on, Gary, you dive heat there. Yeah, atmosphere and soil. So in the atmosphere, we've got carbon dioxide, it splits into carbon and oxygen. And of course, we've got the sun's energy as well is utilized through photosynthesis. In the soil, we've obviously got parent material, and the microbes need to be there to break it down to make it available. How can we recycle carbon? Yeah, earthworm's a good one. Yeah. From an orchard perspective, so I'm really focusing in the orchard now. Ground cover is correct. Pruning and mulching, leaf litter, compost, so it's, carbon sequestration from the atmosphere is one. Pruning and mulching, leaf litter, composting. So a lot of you guys are doing composting, so I thought I'd better put there just to make you happy. So if I had 50,000 rand a hectare, where would I spend that money? Looking at those. I'm going to be in trouble. So you guys happy with that comment? Okay. So I went and bought a whole lot of compost, and I did this little trial at home. Yes, I know it's nothing scientific. And I put it into a vase, exactly the same compost, and I planted lettuce. So here I put some extra fungi and bacteria. Why? By putting a little bit of some other stuff in there, has this outgrown this side?
Because it's replenishing however it's absorbed. Whatever's in there.
So I put some trichoderma in, and I put some Bacillus aeruginosa, can't say it, into the soil. That's all that I added that's extra on this side. So theoretically, compost has got everything in it. Lance?
It's got to be made available to the plant.
Okay. But it's top quality compost, so it should be available.
So
The plants.
You're saying it's already got all those biologicals in the compost?
Well, theoretically it should.
Should, but it hasn't, right?
It's top quality compost, this. This has come from a proper composting facility. It's been through African night crawlers. So I also look blank. What's going on? And I actually don't know if I got the answer. The roots on this side were 46 grams versus 26 grams. That's amazing. Look at the carbon that's been created here versus there. And yet I was in compost. Exactly the same compost. Does it make you think? I don't have the answer.
What are you selling?
I'm still getting to that. I'm building you up.
But Mark, question. Okay, you put your muti on, you've seen that result, bacteria is now in the soil. Can you now back off and the system, the natural system will drive itself, or do you have to keep on topping it up with bacteria?
Okay, so nature's always going to go to balance. Always, depending on the soil conditions and what you're doing on the farm. So there's so many variables that theoretically, in the perfect world, you actually don't need us or chemical companies or fertilizer in the perfect world. But that doesn't seem to be working at the moment.
Are there no labs that are coming into being now where they can actually measure? Because Bunch raised the very interesting, you and I tell about it forever. I mean, when's enough enough? Should I be doing it on an annual basis? You can definitely see the results. But now there are no labs that can actually measure those beneficials and quantify them and say, listen, you don't need to top up. And there might be an imbalance in some way or form, there's something you're missing there. Let's rather focus on something else.
So I can give you a soil health test.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so you need to test, see what's going on. I mean, I saw a couple of tests down the south coast. They're putting down a fungal, what they're using to make the compost is a lot of wood. So it's from gardens, trees chopped, so it's really woody compost, which should produce a really high fungal-based environment. There's hardly any fungi in the soils. So what's going on? I'm confused. But the compost should be high in fungi. So we do need to test. And hopefully you do get to a point where You don't need to be adding more, but I don't. At the moment, we don't have those answers.
Doesn't it always also depend on the crop that you grow? In a macadamia, you're not playing with the soil or interfering with the soil as much as if you were planting maize, where you are constantly taking out and putting back. So.
No, definitely. I mean, if you're ripping and disking and ploughing, you're going to be at it all the time. You have to be. Where this is a much more stable environment, so it'll be less affected. But then you can go and spray a product to kill weeds and you have a detrimental effect on your microbes.
Did you plant the lettuce by seed or?
Seedling.
Seed. Did you treat the seed?
Seedlings.
Seedlings.
Yeah. So they came from a reputable nursery.
Okay.
I chose similar looking ones as best I could and just planted it, So hold my head back. This is not working for me.
Sorry, Mark,
Okay.
something else that came up yesterday that to answer that question, and that's something that was an aha moment for me yesterday, is also that those fungi, remember, are food for other things in the system. So even though they are breeding there, they will be eaten by something else. So that balance will constantly change.
Yeah.
And the bacteria.
But if we can get to the perfect balance,
Yeah.
which we really hope we see one day, then, Okay, so here's an example of what I did. So this came off Elaine Ingham's course that I'm doing. So they took sterile, in this case they sterilized the medium, and they looked at plant mass versus the biology. So the P is the plant only, PB is plant and bacteria. There, so a little bit of bacteria added, showed a little bit of improvement. Then they added those two, obviously, protozoa, bacteria, and bacterial feeding nematodes, and they had quite a big jump on plant mass. Then the next one they did is they added that, they went and added fungi only. Look at that growth and that increase in growth. Fungi is extremely important in your soil, extremely important, and most soils are lacking in it. And then obviously you go on, they add a little bit more and we have a drop and then we have another increase again. But here where we've just got fungi, bacterial feeding nematodes, protozoa and bacteria, there's huge growth. So that backs up what I've just showed you, the lettuce story. But it still confuses me that compost should actually have all that in it. Yet we're still showing a remarkable increase in growth. So,
Well, Mark, sorry, before you carry on, it would be interesting to take that compost, give it to combustion, and see what activity you've got in it, because that's showing you haven't got any.
okay, so that compost has actually got, what's that certification? EcoCert.
Check it out. Make sure it has.
I can guarantee you it's probably the best compost in the country.
I'm not getting into trouble.
It's got an EcoCert registration. So to get EcoCert registration, you need a fair amount of stability. And it's damn difficult in a composting
Well,
environment.
I think there's a very big question that we need to answer here.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So we can do it with your compost. Should we do the trial with your compost? And Lance, why don't you do a whole lot of trials?
Sorry, I think it also shows us that we're dealing with a natural system, and as much as we're learning more, we don't always know what's going on.
But I think that's a very good point, because as far as I know, I hope I'm not hijacking your
No.
we can only produce a handful of bacteria in a petri dish. But in the natural world, we've got billions. So I'm just trying to work out, your products work at the beginning, but surely once you've got the system to start, it should be able to sustain itself.
I think there again, as we've discussed, it always goes back to balance. But if you've got let's say that's the perfect world, 100%. You go to a forest that's been untouched by man, how does that thing just keep?
Yeah.
And those trees are massive. They're massive. How does it keep? It's recycling all the time.
Regenerating.
Yeah. So go and sit in a forest there and you probably work it out.
Read Mark Shepherd's book.
Yeah.
I'll give it opportunity afterwards.
I was just going to say also farming monoculture is not natural.
No.
So to expect it, you are farming monoculture, but to expect it to go back to a natural system, it's not going to happen.
But I think that's the paradigm shift that we need to make. Yes, this is helping, but ultimately we need to have a system that is sustainable in the long run. We're custodians of the soil, and to do that, we need to try and mimic what's happening in nature, but in a sort of commercial space. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but 100%. That's why I went and visited a forest a couple of months ago, and you sit there and think, this is where we need to be. Okay, practically it's not going to happen because we've got hectares and hectares of max. That's it. There's no biodiversity. That's all missing. There's no insect biodiversity. There's a whole lot missing. So until all those things start to happen, don't expect to stop applying a fungi or bacteria, for example. There's a lot of stuff that needs to shift.
The difficulty is I agree with Bench. I mean, there's an honourable approach, but it's all about balance. And unfortunately, we're all tasked and cornered in the agriculture industry to run for that big thing, and that's economic viability. So when trying to obtain that balance and trying to safeguard your crop that's on there, there's a lot of residual chemical. I mean, something, for instance, on our slopes that they threaten area that they're going to take out, and I look at it as a tool, and one of the weapons is the neonics and the drenches, and they are extremely successful. Hopefully the technology will get a bit better, but where's it going to go to? That must have an impact on you busy replenishing and putting in your good biologicals. It's got to have an impact, and perhaps we need to be topping up and boosting and adding to, but we'll only know that once we start sampling the soils. So it's very difficult to try and obtain this balance, and you keep referring to a perfect world. A perfect world, we'd all make money without having to, resort to these harsher means. So, yeah, but the fact that the conversation is being had and the results that you're getting, it shows that there are ways that actually can enhance your economical value, as well as being a custodian of the land to some degree.
Oh, definitely.
But Lance, I mean, that's a good point, because what we need to do is bring down our operating costs. And this is the kind of thinking we need to employ so that you can bring down your operating costs. Then you don't have to have the stellar yields, etc., to carry the day.
Okay, so do you remember I asked you about pruning, mulching, leaf litter? I've left carbon sequestration out of this. So am I wrong if I say that it's costing you about that much money to put compost down? Because that's the figures I've heard yesterday. Happy? Okay, it's money. Let's not decide on a figure. So if I put microbes in the root system and I increase the root systems as I've showed you, and I increase nutrient uptake as I've showed you, what's going to happen?
You're going to have a better yield, you're going to make more money at the end of the day.
Goes far too ahead.
Well, with that, you're going to have more leaf litter falling down, you've got more prunings because you've got a better tree, and that's the system starting to drive itself, you see?
You jump-starting the system, the cycle.
Yeah. So now you just ruined my lecture here. Which means we're going to increase the amount of pruning and mulching that we're doing. So now we're starting to double up. Maybe doubling up is a bit of a strong word, but we're starting to increase the amount of pruning and mulching that we're putting under our tree. At the same time, we're also increasing leaves for leaf litter. Because we've seen where we've done something about the soil, we're getting more leaves. Now we're putting more leaf litter under the ground. So now, what do you want to do?
Just keep doing that because you're creating a natural environment again.
And what do the farmers say? Are you going to still go and spend 45,000 rand a hectare?
You jump-start it, you don't need to any longer. You take irrigation, you start looking at your probes and your water requirement will start falling, plummeting. There's lots of benefits, but it takes a while to get.
So I'm just testing you because a lot of us are doing that. A lot of us, and I'm not saying it's wrong.
But that's because we are sugar farmers who've been years and years and years of abusing soils and are now trying to regenerate and rejuvenate what quite possibly are inert soils. And so we're trying to jumpstart the system to get it back to start that cycle.
Okay, so now we've jump-started it. Are we going to go and do this now?
It's a problem.
No. So I agree with jump-starting. Some soils are terrible, and you might have to do it. You might have to spend that 45. But the sooner we can get into the cycle...
You just have to transition from where you are now.
Yeah. So concentrating on, if we can fix this, we're going to fix that, and we're going to have much more mulch and litter underground, on the ground. And that's what we're looking for. But there's another step.
Where does the cover crops from because I'm looking at that picture there, it looks like the grass grows to a certain point, like you talk about mulching and composting. What about the cover crop conversation, or just letting the natural, Colleen alluded to it as well.
Yeah,
where does that fit into the cycle?
Yeah, so that's obviously adding on to the program. But for right now, I just want to bring attention to what your tree can do for you.
Yeah, but when those trees are small, I'm not going to get much pruning.
No, you won't. Yeah, so small trees, totally. Composting. Yeah.
But Mark, to answer this question, let's say you plant a multi-species cover. You've got plant diversity on the top, which is going to give you much more diversity underneath in terms of bacteria and fungi.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You do need to be doing it. I mean, how many orchards you walk in there and there's just bare soil. That's just absolutely crazy. And there's still quite a lot of them around.
Because there's no sunlight.
And she's, how close are your trees? 3 by 3 or no, but that's also, I mean, if you've got no sunlight, you're not going to be able to grow anything there. But if you've got more living soil and more organic matter, something's going to grow. Something will. Yeah.
Is the cover crop that plug in the interrow then?
Yeah, that's between the interrow, yeah.
And are there cover crops that are better in tune with max or proteas or whatever to generate what you need microbially or fungally to go back into the soil?
So I'm not the expert on cover crops at all, but it's diversity. So if you can create diversity, and that's what those cover crop guys are actually concentrating on, and bringing the diversity into your soils. So recycling is the way forward. Anybody disagree with that? Still, easy question. Okay, so the soil is hiding gold or carbon. This is probably where you start shouting at me. Root exudates. Anybody paying attention to that? Or do you even know what it is or what it does?
What is an exudate?
Okay, so I even got so clever and I even told you.
Oh, there we go.
So if I gave you a prize, you've got to come back. Okay, all right. Thanks for asking the question. I'll give you a prize. You need suntan cream, rather. Okay, so it's a fluid full of nutrients excreted by the roots. Very simple. Have any of you guys even thought about it? Okay, I'll take that as a no.
Why do they do that?
It's absolutely fascinating why they do it. Mm-hmm. They do it and you can't stop them. It's like it just happens all day. They're putting nutrients into the soil and then you've got no fungi and bacteria to take advantage of it. It's like weird.
We in the cane industry, because of no cash, in some sandy soils, they've got a huge problem with synovium coming in. And that exudes a root exudate, which kills any other thing around it, so nothing else grows there, because it wants to grow itself there. And it's a real problem.
So a root exudates, just like you've said, they control the environment. It's like voodoo. It's amazing. So, if we get this right, the below falls into place.
Definitely not like sound like snake oil.
Don't we were scientists?
Off the chart. So if we can get these things right, the top exudate story right, we're going to grow more roots, bigger roots, deeper roots. We'll have decomposing roots, which is putting carbon back into the soil. We'll have slothing of root hairs and fine roots as well. That's also carbon going back to the soil. So, quick question, carbon, no, I'm getting to that. Increasing the biomass of soil food web. Did you know that fungi is 80% carbon? Bacteria is 20%. See how important carbon is. As the fungi grows, the older section of that fungi starts to harden and it becomes carbon. So why aren't we producing carbon? Producing fungi. Remember, all your insects are putting carbon back in, your fungi are, your bacteria is. The soil food web is putting carbon back into the soil. Roots, dying roots, exudates are probably the most efficient carbon producers that you've got. Way beyond carbon, way beyond compost. So, movement of carbon from the atmosphere into the soil as exudates is called the liquid carbon pathway. And we don't even know about it. We're not even taking advantage of it. But it's actually happening in your farm and you don't even understand it. Sorry, I'm being a little bit harsh. How do we increase root exudates deposits into the soil? How do you think we're going to do that? Sorry?
Planting more.
Cover crop?
Mark, what you're alluding to now, you're
Recycling.
first world countries refer to as carbon credits.
We'll get there. Yeah. But you already in South Africa, there are carbon credits around. Yeah. But it's not, no, this itself is not alluding, the whole picture is alluding to carbon credits, and they are coming, or they're already here. So we need to be building carbon for that purpose, yeah.
But if you got your fungi right, and you had your fungi in your soil, it would do that anyway. So I'd say the answer really is if you got your fungi right and your other one, if you got those levels correct, then you'd be where you want to be.
Yeah. Okay, so here's a picture on how one of the ways we can do it. So here we applied fungi and bacteria, and there we didn't. So you can see the condition of these trees is exactly the same. Okay?
This orchard is in Mansfield estate. We did our first application in August. I've just now repeated another application now, the root health program. So on the left-hand side is where we've applied. You can see the color, the density, the number of leaves. So they've really improved dramatically. And on the right-hand side is the control. You can see a very big difference in the plant health.
Huge.
So there's two ways to go about that. There was no compost applied there, right? We just put fungi and bacteria in. But you can also apply compost. So what I'm saying, there's two ways to go about this thing. And why is it? Okay, beside the fact that they're riddled with Phytophthora, we've got more leaves there. I mean, Lance, you've seen it in your orchards. More leaves, longer leaves, wider leaves. They've just created very quickly. So now I'm photosynthesizing much quicker. I'm dropping more exudates. So my concentration of exudate deposition is way higher. Another example, these are maxed down the coast. So this is the picture before we started. This is 25 days later. There again, don't expect it all the time. This guy is like fanatic. But look at that result. So I've got more leaves here. Way better. The tree health is way better. So surely if I'm doing that, my exudate rate is way higher than here. Way higher. Okay, so let's look at different plants and the rate of percent of exudates that go into the soil. So weeds, only 20% of the above ground energy goes into the roots. So, I mean, you can obviously know that why that's doing, because it's trying to protect the soil, so it's growing vegetative growth on top. It's not trying to keep the roots going for eternity, where in an orchard it's the other way around. Up to 85% of the energy above ground goes below ground. So only 20% roughly gets used for production above ground. That for me is startling. It's like, wow. So the 80% that has now been put underground into the root system, remember also the plant naturally needs to store energy for next season, so the whole reason why it's doing it, but it's a high figure. 50% of that 80% then gets pushed into the soil, which makes up a total of roughly 40% of the total energy above ground lands up outside as an exudate. So if you earned 10 million rand and you just took 4 bar and just threw it outside, would you go and look after it or just leave it out there? So we're getting a huge amount of cash being dumped into the soil and we're actually not taking advantage of it. And listen, you guys can argue the percentages and whatever. The principle is that it's happening. Whether you like it or not, it's happening and we're not utilizing it. So why dump so much energy into the soil? Why would a plant want to do that? Any guesses?
Because it knows the soil needs to be healthy for the next
For future generations.
Yeah? Anybody else? So let's just go through the whole process, what actually happens. So we've got CO2, we've got sun and energy, well, energy from the sun, photosynthesis takes place. The tree sends out oxygen for us, and then through that it starts to form carbon chains or photosynthates, which then 80% goes into the soil, into the roots. 50% of that is delivered into the soil, so you land up with 40% energy as exudates. That is carbon going into the soil. It's also increasing the microbes. That's feeding the microbes. Now, why would I want to feed the microbe? I mean, really, it's like...
You want them to multiply.
Yeah, exactly. So, we increase the microbes. We land up by stimulating the plant to produce more exudates. So if the plant's in good nick, it's going to produce more exudates. But that's what we're trying to do. If we've increased the microbes in the soil, we obviously get root stimulation. With root stimulation, I should have put an arrow there as well, you're going to get more exudates. With increasing microbes, you're having nutrient availability also increases. You land up with a much bigger root system. You're therefore also delivering carbon here as well. Remember, the other side too here, increasing soil microbes, they also pass on, so they're also putting carbon back into the soil. Then you land up with a healthy plant, leaf surface area. You increase the rate of photosynthesis, and so the cycle begins again. Now you've increased your photosynthate, more exudates, more microbes, more roots, more carbon, and the cycle continues. So if we go back, there's a cycle going on here between microbes, exudates, roots, carbon. There's a cycle going on. And then there's a bigger cycle going on. And remember, if we go, I'm not going to go back. There's also a cycle that we showed, your leaf litter, pruning and mulching is also going on. So you've got all these cycles going on in this tree root zone. Compounded interest. Any of you businessmen? Is that compound interest or is it just, does it make sense? Compound interest is one of the best ways to make money. Agreed? There it is right there. That's all the stuff that's going on. And every time you do one step, it just builds. You're getting more and more back. So do you still want to spend 45,000 rand on compost? Keep asking the question. So how does it actually work? So here's a picture of a root. Exudation. You get passive and you get purpose-driven delivery. So passive is the plant has no control over it. There's a certain amount of exudates that's just dumping. Because it's in good neck, it's dumping, it's feeding the soil food web, and then you get the purposeful driven. So it's sending those that exudate out for a specific fungi or bacteria for a specific reason, because there's like a mutualistic discussion going on. I'll give you this, you give me back in return. So it's passive and purpose-driven purpose-driven exudation. And with that, your beneficial, so it's either, so you can either go to beneficial or non-beneficial microbes. So the passive, it can go to Phytophthora, for example, because it's just dumpy. It can't decide, it's got no control over it. Where your purpose-driven is normally going to your beneficial microbes in the soil, because your plant doesn't want to feed a Phytophthora, it wants to feed a Trichoderma, for example. And guess where this is all happening? The same place it's happening down here, the root tip. And guess what's happening with calcium? It's also been absorbed here. Calcium is absorbed in your newly developed root tips. So if you don't have a healthy root system growing all the time and new roots, are you getting calcium uptake? No. You're also battling with exudation because it's all happening here. So there's a very, very strong reason for looking after your roots. The other thing that also makes a difference is the concentration gradient. So remember we showed this recycling, healthier plant, more nutrition. So the more the nutrition builds in the plant, the concentration gradient within the plant starts to shift. So the more nutrition it's got in it, it's got to dump more exudates. So where do microbes fit into this whole picture? They consume the exudates and they return nutrition back to the plant. That's what they do. Now remember so the concentration of exudates in the root zone is also critical. So you've got concentration in here and concentration out here is critical. And that's where the diffusion starts to take place. So just to give an example, exudates get pumped out, the bacteria consumes it. Now there's a void. Because there's a void, the exudates get pumped out again. So as it's been consumed and the bacterial numbers are growing because it's been fed, it just keeps eating and growing and growing and growing in numbers. Have I lost you, Oaks? The other thing to consider as well, root hairs. If we've got a really good root system that's healthy, we've got root hairs. So where there are root hairs present, there's 3 times greater root surface area, which means greater nutrient availability and uptake, greater exudation and microbial activity, greater carbon deposits. So we want to produce a really healthy plant with root hairs. And to finish it off, this is basically our Madumbi root health program where we apply the Eco-T, which is a trichoderma, and Rhizovital, which is a Amelia liquefaciate. We apply here just before flowering to try and stimulate the root development. We then apply here as well just before nut drop because we're trying to stop this root development from crashing. We want to try and hold it up as best we can. And then we normally apply another application here, which is about January, February, depends on the variety, to also stimulate a better root flush as well. So that's short and sweet of what we normally do in an orchard. So I'd be very interested to know what your take-home message is. And for the person who gives the best take-home message, gets some of my homegrown honey. It's natural, from a bush. We've got a lot of bush around us. Doesn't taste like macadamium or avo. It's as natural as you're going to get it. The best take-home message. Come on. This is worth gold, I'm telling you.
It's not the fruits. It's the roots, you got that fruits.
Okay.
After the roots, you'll always have.
Let's have another one first before I hand it over. Anybody?
Pharmaceutical products.
No. No. You can't bribe me.
Soil.
Test the soil.
Address
the soil. Yeah.
Need more honey.
I have.
Well, it's easy, Mark.
Okay, now you're not allowed to answer because you're way ahead. But carry on. I'm just.
Tell you what, you said it, Einstein's definition of insanity.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. We have to change.
Absolutely.
From the soil of the plant.
That's just, I love that.
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody else. Right, guys, thank you very much. I've completed my talk. I hope I've managed to entertain you. Didn't put anybody to sleep. Yeah, thanks for your time.
Cool. Okay.